I'm Edwin Ellis. I'm a research partner affiliated with the Center for Research on Learning at the University of Kansas. In this video, we'll be examining the Setting Tone DVT, which is part of the Differentiated Visual Tools for Strategic Instruction. The Setting Tone DVT was designed for addressing specific Common Core standards. For an example, for reading literature, it addresses the 6th grade standard determining the meaning of words and phrases as they're used in text, including figurative and connotative meanings. Analyze the impact of a specific word choice on meaning and tone. So as you'll see, this particular visual targets this specific standard. This visual can also be used for addressing specific expository writing standards. For example, students can use the ideas that they note on this visual as the basis for writing an expository essay about the setting tone. What I'm going to do is unpack the components of the visual for you and explain parts as we go. So we'll start with the name of the book or a chapter from the book, and then what we'll do is define tone as a literary device to help students understand what that's all about. Then what we'll do is we'll think about what happened at the beginning of the story and have students identify what seems to be the tone. I've provided some basic prompts, for an example, pessimism or optimism, anxious, serious, bitterness, humorous, joyful, sad, or some other dimension of tone. Then what we'll do is identify what were some specific words the authors used to help influence the tone at this point in the story. We'll follow that by identifying a specific character in the story and then address how the tone in the story seemed to shape the character's actions. Then we'll do the same thing for the middle of the story and again at the end of the story. So let's look at how a 6th grade teacher used this visual when reading the story Milkweed by Jerry Spinelli. So looking at the tone at the beginning of the story, well, it was pretty exciting. It was very serious. Words the authors used to help influence the tone at this point in the story. The authors wrote deep and grumbling noise, people were hurrying, machine guns were like praying mantises, deafening drumbeat. So a key character in the story was Misha, who at that point in the story was called Stop Thief. So how the tone of the story shaped the character's actions? Well, the Nazis were marching into the city, entranced Misha. He wanted to be like them, and he tried to run into the street to join the jackboots. On the other hand, the crowd was very subdued and serious as they realized their city had been invaded. So in the interest of time, I won't go through this whole thing like this, item for item, but this should give you a pretty good idea of how this DVT works. Moving on now to applying principles of strategic instruction, this DVT is best used after the story or chapter has been read. And so we would first read the story and then look back and identify key things from the story as we're developing the information to go on this DVT. So what we want to do is scaffold instruction as students are learning how to use a visual like this. So initially we'll use an I do it approach to teaching, which is basically I'll be modeling the thinking processes associated with identifying what the various words were that best capture the tone of the story. And I'll be using think aloud techniques to demonstrate thinking as I'm looking back through the text and identifying key words the authors used to establish the tone. And I'll also be modeling note taking for students and prompting students to basically at this point just copy my notes. Then as we move into the middle of the story and analyzing that part, we'll be doing this together. So we call this a we do it approach, where we're actually co-constructing the notes that will be put onto the visual. And so I'll be pulling ideas from students about what are words that capture the tone of the story during the middle and noting those, having the students help me identify key words from the middle of the story that sort of capture the tone, and then modeling note-taking and prompting them to take notes, as well as identifying how the tone of the story shaped the character's actions. So this is basically the teacher in the class doing this together. Then for the last part of the story, we'll shift again, and this time we move to a y'all do it approach or a peer-supported approach to practice. So here I'll have students form pairs to work together, and they'll identify and note the ideas, and then later share them with the class. If you're interested in accessing a PowerPoint slide as well as an interactive PDF file so you can try out this DVT with your students, you can access this through the free Literature DVTs demo download from our website. They're interactive in the sense that you can use the keyboard to type information into it and then save it to folders. The interactive PDF can be emailed to students, so these are great tools if you're using tablets and other forms of paperless approaches to teaching. If you're interested in purchasing the Literature DVT software, then CDs and immediate download of the software is also available at our website, makesensestrategies.com. For information about multi-user licenses as well as professional development opportunities, send us an email at visualtools@mss.com.